Hi, I'm Yadira Escobar, and I'm running for Congress for District 25. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet concerning me, my family, my political ideas. Character assassination happens, and our reputations are forever tarnished by the easiest of editorials. 5 minutes online can ruin a person's life forever. One of the reasons why I'm running for Congress is that ever since I was a little girl, I was raised here in South Florida. Miami's been my home city from 1994. So I know very well what goes on in both aisles of the political discussion. I've heard what Democrats have to say. I've heard what Republicans have to say, what the fringe of both parties have to say, and what normal centrist folks like me have to say about the whole picture. Ever since I was little, I've heard horrific things on the radio, on TV, calls for open warfare to happen on our neighbor's island. Yes, 90 miles from South Florida lies an island that has a very tumultuous history, a past that involves all of us, immigrants, political refugees. I was granted political asylum along with my family because I am the daughter of a political prisoner. We are all involved in a very complicated history. So having suffered in Cuba, it's the reason why I'm here. I'm running for Congress for 2020 precisely because I live in the United States. And why am I here? Because we had to flee. We are political refugees. We had no life. There was no option for us because back in the day, if you didn't work for the state, you had no other option. We didn't accept the social contract. That's why my parents picked their 2 kids and we left. For years, I have been labeled something that I am not. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just your classic definition of what authoritarianism is. No, I am not a communist. How can I make that clearer? I was homeschooled. I don't have limitations. I have no barriers. If I was a communist, I would say it because I've gotten into trouble denying that I am. I've gotten into trouble for the simplest of things. Advocating for what President Obama later did got me into trouble as well. I've been getting death threats for almost like a decade now. I've had to call the Miami bomb squad because some weirdo put something weird underneath our family car. That's the reality that we live in. If you have your own sovereign, independent idea in South Florida, the media will confront you and they will put words in your mouth and they will get things out of context so that they, in alliance with the political class, with the political establishment, continue to reap the benefits of the Cuban people's suffering. And the same goes for all other communities. Those who mock my pain, those who deny me my real identity, putting words in my mouth, distorting the facts, omitting entire years of my life. Because for years, as the spokesperson and vice president of a nonprofit here in South Florida, we advocated for the release of the political prisoners. We advocated for the elimination of the white card, which kept us locked in Cuba for 4 years. We advocated for beautiful things that add to a peaceful future, a collective future where everybody has a chance to speak their mind and not fear retaliation. But of course, entire chapters of my life are censored, are omitted, so that they can run this fraudulent narrative that I don't recognize as me, because that is not who I am. That's not Yadira Escobar. What are you talking about? Why aren't you mentioning the fact that my mother's disabled? Because when she was pregnant with my little brother, she was pushed aside. She was the victim of police brutality. And she told me when we were suffering that police raid in our humble home in Cuba, she told me, do not forget what you are living. Do not forget what you are seeing. This is what happens in Cuba. And I was screaming because I didn't want a stranger touching me. I didn't want no police officer in full uniform, a very tall man, to be grabbing my legs and ripping apart the shoes that morning my father had bought for me. And I was super grateful because I was barefooted. because the revolution impoverished my family. We lost properties, we lost businesses, we lost homes, we lost wealth, lands even, eventually. That's what the revolution did to me. But that day that we were the victims of police brutality in Cuba still exists in my mind, and I can't recount it. I tried not to get emotionally involved, but I cannot just stay numb to what I experienced in Cuba. Because it was brutal. It caused, since my mom was pregnant and she was violently pushed by the police officer, she eventually had a stroke. And my dad and I, we sat at a park while she was in the hospital where there was a beautiful sunset, and he told me, let's pray to God. Let's seriously pray to the heavens, to our Creator, the one true God. Let's pray to him so that your mother survives. And she did, and I'm so happy for it, because she wasn't just another nameless person that the local Miami press, the establishment press, won't ever mention, because they hitch on one or two people so that they represent an entire dissidence, an entire opposition, so that everybody else is silenced. We are living essentially in a dictatorship of the mind, and we are denied continuously our real identities. People are afraid to speak in Miami. They write to me in private saying, thank you so much for daring to confront the establishment down here, because people like us are always denied a right to speak, because we are genuine, because we are real, and we weren't created. We're not puppets of some mafia trying to continuously reap the benefits and make millions of dollars off of the suffering of our neighbors. It doesn't matter how much they bark today, because tomorrow we will confront them and they will be judged for their injustices, and the world will see just how primitive the battleground here is in South Florida.